discuss a very important topic, the right to education. It will be very helpful for you if you understand this right to education, not only for you, even your parents and even teachers. All must understand what this act means. And our video lecture will be based on chapter 28 of our lesson, which is in page number 233 to 235 in your Civics textbook, the making of laws. First, let us discuss only 3 points first. There is the right to education, how it come to be, the RTE Act, the Right to Education Act of 2009, some of the provisions, these would be most important, and the role played by the community to implement the provisions of the Right to Education Act. Now, first, let's see the right to education. Now, the right to education is mentioned in our constitution at first in the directive principle of state policy. In this directive principle of state policy, it mentioned that the state government should work to provide free and compulsory free education to the children below the age of 14 years. But since it is mentioned in the directive principle of state policy, it is not enforceable by law. It is like a guideline or an advice to the state government which cannot be enforced. But since education is so important for the development of the nation, many organizations, civil organizations, work very hard to pressure the government to make education a fundamental right. And finally, with the 86th Amendment of our Constitution in 2002, the right to education become a fundamental right, one of the fundamental rights which is guaranteed to the Indian citizens at the 86th Amendment of our Constitution in 2002. And finally, with a long discussion, debate and deliberation, the Indian Parliament passed the Right to Education Act on 4 August 2009, making India one of the 35 countries who make education a fundamental right. So, and the next year, in 2010, the Right to Education Act came into force. So this is a brief background about the Right to Education Act. Now let us see some of the provisions of the Right to Education Act. Right to Education Act of 2009, some of the provisions. These are some of the provisions, so you should know that. Under this Act, the government is responsible for providing free and compulsory elementary education. When we say elementary education, it means schooling from prep to class 8. From prep to class 8, the government should provide free and compulsory education to children of the age group 6 and 14, in between this age group. And the Act also mentioned that private schools are required to reserve at least 25% of the seat for poor children who come from poor family, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, other backward castes. And also, no school is allowed to collect donations, and no school should interview the children or parents for admission. This is according to the RTE, Right to Education Act. At the same time, no children should be held back or expelled from the school, and children should not be required to pass any board examination until the completion of elementary education. Until class 8, they are not allowed to fail, or they are not allowed to face board examination. But after class 8, they are required to face board examination. Then, for children who drop out of the school, they should not be left behind, and special training should be provided to children who drop out of school in order to bring them at par with their age group, so that they are not left behind in the society. At the same time, children and parents are not to bear any direct or indirect costs. Meaning, direct costs fees. Tuition fees should not be taken to students and the parents. And at the same time, the parents and the students should not spend money on uniform, textbooks, midday meals or transportation. All these tuition fees, uniforms, all this, the cost of schooling will be borne by the government. The government should provide all this free of cost to every children under the age of 14. This is about the Right to Education Act, the provisions. Then, what about the community? It is not only the responsibility of the government or the school authorities, the community as a whole also have some role to play in the successful implementation of this act. Here, under the role of the community, schools are required to constitute SMCs. SMCs here means School Managing Committee. Every school should have a school managing committee which include members of the SMC will be from local authorities like in rural areas, the village authority chairman, or in our mother tongue we call House Upa, the village council, as well as the SMC also should include parents and guardians of the students as well as teachers. And what are the roles of the SMC? The SMC, the School Managing Committee, is responsible for school development plan, maybe monthly, yearly plan. They should bring out how to develop the school. At the same time, they were responsible for monitoring any funds which come from the government to provide here. Mostly in government schools, the government used to provide benches or materials, teaching materials. All those, they were responsible for monitoring, as well as monetary funds also used to come from the government. They were responsible for monitoring these funds and the implementation of these funds in the schools. Okay, let's see the finance. You see, implementing and creating new schools and implementing the provisions of the Right to Education Act requires huge amount of finance, huge amount of money. So, in order to effectively implement the provisions of the Right to Education Act 2009, the responsibility, this financial responsibility is borne by the central government and the state government. Here, the central government may request the Finance Commission to provide additional resources to the state government for adequate and proper implementation of the provisions of the Right to Education Act. And the state government is responsible for providing any remaining funds which may be required to set up new schools and to follow the Right to Education Act. So this is how financing of the Right to Education Act is done. It is done with the coordination and cooperation of the central and state government. This is how it is done. Then, moving on. What about the violation of the Act? If anyone violates the Act, point number 5, violations of the Act. How do we safeguard anyone from safeguard the provisions of the RTE from violations? Here, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights at the national level. The National Commission for Protection of Child Rights is given the responsibility to investigate and to look into any complaints and grievances on the violation of the provisions of the Right to Education Act. At the same time, the Act also asks the state government to constitute a State Commission for Protection of Child Rights at the state level. A State Commission has to be constituted within 6 months of the enforcement of the Right to Education Act. And any complaint, anyone who have grievances, anyone who feel that they were not provided the full provisions of the RTE Act, must write a written complaint to the local authority, and the local authority will submit to the State Commission or maybe to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, and they will look into it. They will they will take up the case. This is how the violation of the Act is prevented. Next, point number 6. Point number 6 is implication of the law. What does the Right to Education Act implies? Here, the aim of the Right to Education Act is to provide education to disadvantaged children. To provide education to disadvantaged children. These children, those children who are disadvantaged, who are in a disadvantaged position, may be due to social conditions, social, cultural, economic, or other factors, who become disadvantaged, who are poor, the lower section of the society. It will provide education to these people. And it is believed that the Right to Education Act will benefit children who are disadvantaged, like mentioned, as well as children who are engaged in child labors, or children of migrant workers, and children with special needs. They are CWS and children with special needs, or we also call them differently able children. It will benefit them. This was the aim of and the implication of the Right to Education Act of 2009. With this, let us conclude our lesson today.